Hello and welcome to Unleashed. I'm your host, Will Bachman, and I'm delighted to be here today with Chris Freeberg, who is a former managing director at Boston Consulting Group and is now a por true portfolio professional with many things going on. Chris, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Will.
So, Chris, you now have a portfolio career happening. You're an entrepreneur, advisor, fractional. Tell us a little bit about, just give us a range of what you have going on.
Yeah, absolutely. Really happy to be here, Will. Thank you for making time for me. Until 2024, until actually next week last year, I was a managing director and partner at BCG. I was there for 12 years. As I was leaving BCG, I really was eager to get, more into doing rather than just advising. I founded a company called deck.support, which sought to bring some of the best of the type of tools that BCG provided us for PowerPoint, but into Google Slides. We launched last month in the Google Workspace Marketplace as an extension to Google Slides.
And that's what we're going to get into in much more detail in the show. But before we get into deck support, like what else do you have going on?
Yeah, absolutely. Beyond that, I've continued to support some of my former clients at BCG, but more in a fractional executive or project-based basis. I've taken on a fractional executive role at brandcoms.ai, which is the spin out of a insights firm focused on marketing campaign idea generation and Gen AI video. And then I have another sort of entrepreneurial idea that I'm batting around in the PE diligence space. So it's depending on the day, I would say I have 4 or 5 things going on, but all of which are very interesting and fulfilling.
Amazing. Let's talk about deck support. So we are doing audio only here, but we're doing a video call. So if you could share your screen, I'll provide a bit of a play-by-play of what I'm seeing. I'd like to see this tool that
Yeah, absolutely.
Google Slides
Let me
presentations.
share it up for you. So deck support lives within Google Slides. So I just pulled up our Google Slides for you, and you'll see the deck support window here on the right. This was launched through the extensions tab. You'll see you go to extensions within Google Slides, deck support, pro tools for Google Slides, and then the sidebar opened here on the right.
Okay.
Yeah, so what deck support does is essentially seeks to replicate the type of tools that BCG provided for me within the BCG ribbon within PowerPoint. Ultimately, BCG is sort of white labeling tools from Efficient Elements and ThinkCell, two German companies that have both been around for a very long time. Both, I would say, relatively sleepy companies that only work in the sort of desktop version of PowerPoint. And one of the things that my co-founder Dimitri and I realized as we were leaving BCG is, one, it sucks to work without those tools, either in PowerPoint or Google Slides. I actually, when I left BCG, I paid for my ThinkCell license, which is over $300 a year. I tried to think of different ways to bring some of the Efficient Elements tools to bear. And so we realized there was a solve for PowerPoint, but there's many companies that are actually switching entirely to Google Slides, some of which you would expect, like, an Uber or a DoorDash or an Airbnb. They're technology-led companies that are in Google Slides. But there's actually, companies that you might not expect. Like the deck that I pulled up here is our enterprise pitch deck to Verizon, because Verizon's on Google Slides, right? 100,000 employees, not all of whom are making a lot of decks, but a company that you probably would have expected would be on Microsoft Office, but is not.
Hmm. Now I'm familiar with ThinkCell. I know a lot of consultants who use that for what is efficient elements?
Yeah, so Efficient Elements brings sort of within one tool set a lot of like the sort of formatting shortcuts. So if you see here on the right, I'm going over like these alignment tools. So for example, if you need to quickly like align, if we wanted my image to be like right aligned to this area, you could press this button and my photo moves from right to left on the page, again, perfectly aligning with the formatting of the columns. If Dimitri and I were flipped and we needed to we need to move where
Wow.
we were on the page, right? We have this button here that sort of automatically flips these elements and maintains them in perfect position. These are the type of like alignment shortcut tools that
Mm.
Efficient Elements provides. There's another one here around like resizing objects, right? Like if you're gonna make this
Mm.
page and you needed the images on the page to all be 75% smaller, for example, because you need, to fit more words. You want it to be 120% larger. You can press this button and you can see the objects automatically resize. Those types of like formatting shortcuts are provided by Efficient Elements in PowerPoint. But again, Efficient Elements doesn't support Google Slides.
Yeah.
And honestly, it's like quite expensive and not really innovative. So that's number
So
one thing. Like I would say those type of alignment shortcuts here. The
cool.
second
Let me
thing,
let me give a little narrative of just what I'm seeing for listeners
yeah,
that don't see. And we'll show a screenshot as well on the if you go to umbrex.com/unleashed on the web page for this episode, we'll have some of these screenshots. So I'm seeing there's sections on here for layouts, and I see like two vertical bars, three vertical bars, four vertical bars. So I'm assuming already that that would be if I want to have a slide with sort of two sections, three or four sections. There's
correct.
an objects sort of section there on the toolbar with either numbers or people or charts or text. There's a templates thing. I want to explore that. There's a charts thing. I imagine that's if all the different chart options. And I see select objects. There's things like uh, I can have one of those like round, you can have cycle type diagrams or all the different types of diagrams. Then there's an AI tab. I'm curious what that's about. There's a theme master, a formatting section, help me format, alignment section with a lot of different options. Out of the box, PowerPoint has your basic align left, align right, align middle, align top, align bottom, but you've got a lot more, maybe 20 different alignment options. And then there's a review section. Okay. So that kind of just narration. Walk me through the different sections here of this.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's funny, the birth of Deck Support happened in the back of an Uber where Dimitri and I were riding back from an independent consulting meeting. And we were lamenting the loss of tools. And what I said to Dimitri at that time was, I would pay $1,000 to be able to quickly create a 2-column slide. Because at BCG, you're just sort of like drilled into you that like the core visual language, like the basic visual language is a 2-column slide with information on the left and information on the right. And so what do? We built a tool, at least for Google Slides, where I can insert a 2-column slides with headings here, right? We charge a lot less than $1,000. But as you'll see here, I press the button and you have, the title was accurate, like, Umbrex podcast demo. You see the column headers are like perfectly sort of formatted as they should be with bigger text, like a bolder text, like the right type of alignment, and then the perfectly even columns again, sort of perfectly centered on the page. Like this is the core BCG slide alignment. Like I had 12 years of, first being beaten into me as a consultant that this is like kind of like probably what 60% of your slides are going to look like. And I beat that into people's heads, when I was a principal partner and ultimately managing director and partner. And so this is the type of thing that like ultimately when you leave a place like BCG, you really miss. And so we ultimately like wanted to provide this type of tool to people that had left and were working in Google Slides, which like they can't even buy a ThinkCell or an Efficient Elements if they're for a client reason or just because of like collaboration reasons, they're preferring to work in Google Slides.
Hmm. Okay, I see that layout. That's cool. And I just took a screenshot, so we'll include that one. Show me kind of the objects piece on the top right there.
Yeah, yeah.
What are
So
some of
objects
these?
are things that you would sort of insert as a sort of text and graphical element onto a page. So I think the sort of easiest example to think about is like, one of these sort of 3-step process wheels or 4-step process wheels. And you'll see here we have anywhere from like 1 to 5. But if you hit, let's say, hit the 3-step process button, this launches here. You'll see it sort of, formatted into the theme colors of the deck. You can have you have this now like as one of the many, many different types of objects that are available. So there's things like those wheel processes, like funnel processes, et cetera. Like the type of like typical sort of like consulting like elements that you're
Hmm.
used to leveraging. You have the
So you have
map
some
element.
maps in there, pillar house, the three, four, five, six pillar houses, loops, segment periods, the puzzle pieces, all of the cliches that we like to use, right? The climate
Exactly,
spiral,
exactly. It's funny, like there's lots of things out there that are, you're trying to have AI completely reinvent the wheel, right? In terms of like how MBB like consultant has been taught how to sort of build decks and visualize things. And our view is, for us knowledge professionals, there's still a lot of value in being able to go back to these really tried and true visual languages that we're all very accustomed to using and are tried and true because they work and clients respond to them and they're familiar sort of visual languages.
yeah, yeah. And then show me so I understand the objects. Show me
Uh-huh.
like the templates. What are those?
Yeah, so templates are sort of more, I would say, more elaborate versions of layouts.
Okay.
So this one's has things like you see like a
Oh,
detailed agenda, right, where you can sort of fill in exactly what you're looking for. Nothing could be complete without a two by
sure.
two matrix pre-built. So let's
Yep.
hit this one, like a BCG or talking to a former McKinsey guy. I'll bring in the BCG matrix, right? So I hit the one matrix button. The templates launches a new slide. So here's the new slide. You see it's got a perfectly formatted sort of 2 by 2 box with the axes that you can label for whatever you've chosen to matrix there.
Okay. And then just go back to the templates. So let's just scroll through them a little bit more.
Yeah.
So we have the typical 2 by 2 matrix. We have, let's see, it takes a
One
minute to
second,
call it
just
up.
uh-huh.
Okay, so there's like a table of contents, a detailed agenda, context and findings. There's the there's the 2 by 2 matrix with a, BFA and a call out on the right-hand side, box prioritization. There's a traffic light slide, Harvey ball slide, timeline slide, customer funnel. So all these nicely laid out, already designed. This is really nice. Decision tree. Even just having access to these templates by itself is great. The 6 cell hive, the strategy house, like you have all of the classics here, and like the
Yeah,
mood
exactly.
board.
We went through and like, we did a couple of things here. Like one, we thought long and hard, like, my founder and I, we have, almost 17 years of BCG experience between us. So we thought a lot about like, what are the types of languages that, slides that we used a lot, like at BCG, and replicated them here. We scraped the web for, public McKinsey decks, public Bain decks, public BCG decks. To find type of visual languages that might have been common at other firms, and tried to build those into to this as well.
Yeah. So this looks like a pretty complete list of these, most common templates, key actions and deliverables and key activities, hypotheses to explore. So very nice collection that probably 90%, 80/20, it's probably 90% of the standard slide designs that you're going to use on a consulting project. Okay. So that's templates. And
Mhm.
then it looks like you also have charts with the more
Yeah, so
numerical
charts, you'll see it
quantitative.
says version 2 coming soon. So we are in the process of developing sort of our ThinkCell competitor, right, for the charting.
All
We've
right.
got our developers, have almost solved the waterfall chart, which we started with a classic, right? And
Yeah.
we've built a sort of a roadmap of the 10 different chart types that we're going to start with by offering. Really trying to bring that same level of like precision to charting I'm sure a lot of your listeners will be familiar with from ThinkCell. But again, bring it into the Google Slides environment, which is just a nightmare to create charts within today.
And talk to me about AI. What's that do?
Yeah, so AI is another feature that we are in the process of building. So at the moment, we have something called, if you press this AI button, it adds finishing touches. And essentially what we've prompted the AI is to take the perspective of like a BCG project leader reviewing
Okay.
an associate or consultant slide,
Yeah.
going through some of the basic checks that are common in that environment. Honestly, what I tried to do is when I was a BCG consultant right out of business school, I had a running list on my homepage of like the 15 things that I heard from a project leader as I went through, and I was like, it was the title on my page was, it said PL yourself, right? Because you should only have to hear once, like, hey, Chris, like the title of the slide doesn't actually match what's on this, like the words on the
There's
page
no
anymore,
there's
right?
no source line.
Yeah, exactly.
I
So
I
so
love
we so
heal yourself.
essentially I tried to remember as much of those 15 things, from 10 years ago as possible, and prompt the AI to read your slide, and it's an integration with OpenAI, the ChatGPT will look at just that one slide that's there if you press the button and sort of go through those checks, and then it adds the specific notes in the speaker notes at the bottom, so you can sort of check, is this doing it right or not at that moment. Let's see what it comes up with here. This is one area where we sort of launched with our MVP on AI, and we're going to continue to develop this sort of like add finishing touches button, but then a much broader element around like be my thought partner. So let's see, you see like the AI suggestions launched here at the bottom. The headline, what is deck support, does not clearly communicate the key takeaway. Consider a more action-oriented or informative headline that concisely summarizes the benefits of deck support. So
Fair enough.
apparently I still need to follow my advice around making sure that the title of the slide matches the information here.
Not a bad suggestion there. It's so interesting, this, PL yourself that you did. That seems to me such a clear mark of someone who eventually will become a managing director at the firm. Like that instinct as an associate to be. What were some of the other things on your PL yourself list that you recall?
Yeah, I mean, so I had a MDP, we call it, managing directors and partners at BCG, the senior, the equity partner on a project, who once came in with a calculator to every CTM and would like go through every line item that was on any slide. And he was particularly focused on those areas where, because of rounding, the numbers don't quite add up. And so I had a number on there, which is either like put in the footnote that the numbers might not sum due to rounding, or just like, go out to an extra decimal point or adjust the decimal point such that the numbers will like ultimately tie, right? So it was like, never let those numbers not tie precisely was definitely on that list.
Yeah, that's a pet peeve of mine. I can understand that. So, like, add a source line, make sure that you have a clear call to action or what is the takeaway.
Another
All
one,
right.
like honestly, I think on there, it's like always remember your audience was another one. Like, is this a slide that my mother should be able to understand, or is this a slide, which means like it is for the most senior executives who have not that, my mother's a smart lady. It's just she's got a lot going on, and this isn't her number one focus, right? So like that was sort of my test. Like, is this clear enough for a senior executive? Or is it like for someone, much more detailed and in the weeds, and you need to like be more data driven, et cetera, by having and much more precise in your language, and have a third level of bullet points there for the analysts on the team who like is trying to show that they're engaged in the process, right? And really that sort of like level of perspective taking was something I remember coaching myself to take, and honestly like was something that really powered my sort of 12 years at BCG to be successful.
All right. So tell me a little bit about just how you built this tool. I'm
Yeah.
curious what the process was like to actually make this.
Yeah, absolutely. So, honestly, Will, like I think what we're experiencing right now is a golden age of entrepreneurship with AI. So the process for us was, and again, I have a co-founder, Dimitri, who left as a principal, was we aligned on the idea. We felt like there was this opportunity. I thought maybe we should just go directly into PowerPoint, but Dimitri had the strong hypothesis that there were a lot of companies in Google Slides, including, clients that he had worked with on BCG, at BCG, like Google itself, like that is on Google Slides. And so we did like 2 days of like quick analysis, like, does anything exist today? Didn't really look like there was anything. We did a little bit of analysis on like, is this feasible? And then what we did is we kicked off a process to find a developer, and we used Upwork. We used Upwork to find a
Uh-huh.
developer in Poland who is an expert in Google App Scripts. We hired him, and we were off to the races. And the reason why I say I think AI is a sort of gold standard at this is like I know nothing about Google App Scripts. I knew nothing about programming language, et cetera. But pretty much every step of the way, I was asking ChatGPT for, does this sound right? Or why should it be this way? Or our developers run into this roadblock? Are there opportunities to find ways around it? And the level of augmented intelligence that provided to get me up to speed, to be able to manage that process was like so great. and sort of so it's like provided such a demystification of the process that it's just enabled all of this to take place in a really smooth and fun way.
So say more about that. It sounds like you did not previously have experience building something like this before. So tell us a little bit more detail. How did you plus ChatGPT plus your actual human developer in Poland, how did that interaction happen? Like, how did you figure out what instructions to give the person in Poland and if their proposal for, hours required was reasonable? How did you evaluate their work, not being technical yourself?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's a great question. So, really what it came down to is we did have to still provide a roadmap, right? So Dimitri and I, built like using honestly PowerPoint, a version that looks like this, right? Like this is essentially what we're looking to create. We explained what each one of the tools should do, right? And I remember like sitting with, at Dumbo House with Dimitri, and we were debating like how do we define a layout versus an object versus a template, right? And so you had to be clear in terms of like what is the intention behind all of these things. And for that, we were really guided by that 17 years of BCG experience and the really being sort of embedded in what these existing tools are today and being familiar with what we liked about them and then also their limitations. So I think that was step number one. We had to be clear on what we were asking for and we had to document it. I think where ChatGPT and the developer came in is then we said, okay, we know what we want to do. Is this possible, right? And we were sort of using AI to ask, why doesn't this exist today? Like, why can't ThinkCell just immediately move into Google Slides? Well, it's a completely different programming language, right? Like, not a single person that ThinkCell would have on their payroll would know how to do this, right? And so that's probably a limitation that they see. So that gave us some confidence that there's some direction to go here, right? And it's possible, but it's not going to be immediately taken away by someone else that sort of fast follows us into this space. And then the third thing is like there's just a lot of beyond the technical developments, there's just a lot of like busy work that you need to do to start a company and like find a bank and get incorporated and all that sort of stuff. And for that, like we really heavily leaned on ChatGPT because like, I am not a detail-oriented person. Like I don't want to do the busy work of finding out stuff. And my co-founder Dimitri moved to Paris during this time. Like he's not an American citizen. So we used ChatGPT to figure out where the best place for two international people selling a software would potentially be to incorporate. We're a Singapore-based company. Like we didn't go to Singapore once in this process, but we used ChatGPT to think of the different jurisdictions where we could incorporate from Delaware to Ireland to Dubai to Singapore, and we landed on Singapore, right? We had to find a bank to bank us in Singapore. I used ChatGPT to evaluate all the 5 different options and run simulations of what the fees would be associated, given different revenue levels and different, sort of currency flows, et cetera. And now we bank with Wise, right? Just over and over again, just sort of like anything that would have required sort of like poring over research or hiring an accountant or hiring a lawyer, we were able to use either ChatGPT to like turn a multi-week and like sort of like a multi-week or like enervating task into something that could be done in a couple of hours or less. And then we use the, things like Umbrex, not things like Umbrex. Love to use Umbrex in the future. Things like Upwork, things like other platforms, Fiverr, to like find people to help to bring this into reality.
Yeah, in terms of the product itself and working with the programmer, not being technical yourself, tell us a little bit more about how did you kind of evaluate if they were kind of going in the right direction, if their
Yeah.
billing
So
stuff seemed
like
reasonable, and
essentially like, the big thing is like, you don't wait. We started this development process. It took about 6 months. Like you don't wait for like at the end of month 6 for there to be a surprise. Does it all work? Right. Essentially like for each one of these sections of the tool sort of became its own block, right? And we would have, before it was launched and available in the App Store, like we had an environment that we could go into and test that things were working, right? And so we would go through and test each one of these things. And sometimes there's a lot of like explanation or like, hey, why did like, our developer would say, I don't understand why this is valuable. Like this is hard to do like, are you sure it's worth it? And Dimitri and I would be like, we cannot launch without that tool, right? Because we know how valuable some of these things are. And that's like a big, was actually, I think, one of the biggest lessons in all through this process, right? Like when you're not technical, you sort of think the most value add process through any of this would be the ability to sort of make the tool itself, to do the coding. But what you realize is like, unless you know, like, unless you're able to take that sort of like user-centered approach and understand like how it's going to be used and how you would then, display it and integrate it into workflows, like, it would fall, flat on its face without like that sort of like perspective that we're able to bring from our BCG experience.
Okay.
But I think
Uh,
that to go back to like the original question is like you set like interim milestones, right? Like, so let's say there's, I don't even know exactly, but there's 60 different functions here on in the ribbon. Week one is about function one. We test, we see how that's coming together. We see that it's working as expected, and we move on to the next one, right? And so we're constantly sort of like checking as we go along, like trust but verify, like in each step of the way.
yeah. And wouldn't ask for like specific numbers, but can you give people just like an order of magnitude sense of excluding your own time? Like,
Mhm.
roughly what did it cost to build something like this?
Yeah. It is what would be the best way to say? It is less than my, BCG base salary for a year.
All right. Thanks. And so how can people get it? And tell us a little bit about, what's
Right
the
now it's
pricing
live
and
in the Google Workspace Marketplace. So, if you're a Slides user, there's a button that says extensions within Slides, and it says add-ons, and then get add-ons, and that'll take you to the Google Workspace Marketplace. You can search deck support, and you'll find us there and download. We have not yet started monetization of the tool yet. So right now, everything that we described here today is completely free. In the future, the alignment tools, which I think are quite helpful, will stay free as a reason for people to, always have this open and always have this sort of available. But those templates that you noticed that you correctly called out are quite valuable. The layouts, the objects, the ability to press that 2-column slide that I would have paid $1,000 for. Those are all paid features in the future.
all right.
The annual fee for this core version of Export is $50 per year. So extremely reasonable.
Yeah.
Once we launch charts, that will be sort of an additional feature that people can pay for. It'll be more than that, sort of the similar. We're testing exactly what that pricing will be, but Think sells about $300 a year, and Efficient Elements is about $100. So the sort of value of 1 to 3, we're probably going to bring to this. So think of it about $150 a year for charts.
So we were chatting about this a little bit before we started recording. I have seen and been, lightly paying attention to these different AI tools more for PowerPoint
Mhm.
and waiting for someone to come out with a tool that would allow you to talk to it as if it were an analyst and say, just give it instructions on it using my template, insert a waterfall slide. Here's the data. Like you copy and paste the Excel thing. Here's the data. Create a standard waterfall slide, right? Or hey, create a 2-column chart, have a BFA, and here's the takeaway on the right hand side, and just produce that specific slide. I've
Mhm.
been surprised because that seems to me what most people would want. Instead, you have these tools like Beautiful or other ones that will create like entire pitch deck, and they're frankly not very good, right? They're not great slides. And most consultants or professionals who are doing work, they don't want someone to create the entire deck for them. They just want like, okay, I need a slide now. You know, I need a process chart. I need a boat chart. Like insert the slide. Why do you think that no startup has done that, which seems like a much easier problem? Instead of creating
Yeah.
the whole deck, just create this one slide according to my template. Just that. Why
Yeah.
does that not yet exist?
No, it's a great call out. I completely agree with you. When I was first telling people about our idea that we're down this path on deck support, I would say one of the most common reactions was like, isn't AI just going to kill this one day? And probably when someone creates a product like you're describing, um, I think it could, like, the need for this type of tool will diminish. I think we're still a number of years away from that. And in fact, like the Be My Thought Partner functionality that we're building into this, like we're going to try and like get closer to what you're doing than what Beautiful or Tome or others out there are doing. I think for me, it comes down to a fundamental misunderstanding of how knowledge professionals work, right? And if you are a, managing director at BCG, if you were a principal, an AP at McKinsey, if you were a manager at Bain, like you are used to, you have enough experience to know that the narrative of the deck is so important. The way that you visually bring that to life is so important, that every word choice matters. And you're really much more interested in augmented intelligence than artificial intelligence, right? Like I use ChatGPT all the time to help me get bullet points that are, based upon my inputs that are conciser, that are more concise, that are more parallel, et cetera, right? But I still maintain control over every word that goes on a slide to one of my, fractional executive clients or whatnot. And I just think that most of those AI companies are sort of built from the notion of, hey, PowerPoint, we're engineers. We don't really see the value of PowerPoint. We just think something that like looks snazzy and is easy is like what people need, right? And that works if you're a high school student, like that needs to get an assignment done. It might work, in certain professional contexts. I actually think like Tome does a really good job for sales decks, right? Where there's, it's clear what the offer is, and you just you have a bunch of sales guys and girls like that you need to get decks out, like pitch decks out to clients in a very systematized way that are consistent with the offer guidelines. But once you're into the nuance of what, an Umbrex member does or what a MBB, consultant does, like all of those tools sort of fall flat.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, it's just been such a mystery to me why it seems like a very solvable problem and a much easier problem than creating the whole deck. Instead of creating the whole deck at like a fairly lousy level, just create one slide. You already have the templates. It's like fairly
Yeah,
straightforward
it's
mechanical
it's interesting.
thing.
Like, so one of my we talked about how I have a portfolio of things. So I'm also the SVP of go-to-market for a company called brandcoms.ai, which is sort of disrupting how creative campaigns are generated by advertisers, how quickly you can generate ideas, how quickly you can go from ideas to an animatic that can be tested against consumers, and how quickly you can then translate those to other assets, like processes that can take months with a traditional creative agency, we can do within 2 weeks, right? All of that, and it's funny, as we were going through that, we're understanding the limitations of AI models, right? And one of the biggest limitations or biggest challenges for us is that AI models are really bad with consistency. And so the one of the things that's hardest, or the prompt that would be hardest for us to do is to generate the same character over and over and over again, right? Like if you think of like Flow from Progressive, the same character that's in every ad, AI models just cannot replicate the same character over and over again today. OpenAI announced like that they made some breakthrough with that over the weekend with the sort of sunsetting of Sora into the visual capabilities within 4.0. Still not great, right? Like I literally was playing around with it all weekend trying to get it to generate consistent sort of pictures of my wife, and it can't do, right? Like it still cannot do that sort of level of consistency. And so I think part of what you're asking for, right, is for something that's like perfectly contextualized within your template, within your way of working. And like for whatever reason, the models today are much better at like always starting from a blank sheet and like trying to bring that level of consistency from user, like on a micro level is just not where the models are today.
Fascinating. So, um, what was it like getting your product into the Google App Store and um,
Painful. So there's a
was it?
whole process that you need to submit to the Google Workplace Marketplace for approval. It's a process that should exist. It's a process that verifies like why, when we ask that, Google users have to grant us access to their slides because you can't insert any of these things unless you have access to the slides, and none of these things could be saved unless we also have ability to save slides, et cetera. So I understand why they do it. It is in part a verification that our app is secure, consistent with their best practices and like not trying to steal your information, all of which is true. The challenge is like you basically run into this process where you've got like two different teams within Google, all of whom seem to be based on the other side of the world somewhere. So I would wake up every morning to like different sort of cryptic emails asking me to check things. Like one would come at like 1:15 in the morning, and the next would come at like 4 a.m. being like, why is this required here? But not really explaining what the nature was behind the question. And so that process lasted, I think, about 6 weeks from end to end of just like sort of cryptic questions coming in the middle of the night. And them saying that something was wrong in how we set things up, but not telling us exactly how to fix it or where to fix it. Again, a place where thankfully ChatGPT helps a lot. So I copied every one of those questions into ChatGPT and had it walk me directly, suggest where exactly within the Google Cloud Console I could find the opportunity to fix it. But it was painful and opaque, but it's a good process, and it's one of the reasons why users should be confident that this is a secure and safe app to use.
That led me to my next question, which is, tell me about security. So if I'm, creating a deck and I, add on deck.support, how do you make sure that, that you keep the material in that deck confidential?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. So we have no ability to see how you use the tool or what buttons you push or anything about your usage, right? Once we turn on our CRM capabilities, we'll capture your email address and we'll capture like, do you have an active account or not? And that is the only information that we ever have. If you press the AI button, consistent with OpenAI's terms of service, the slide that you are looking at will be transmitted to OpenAI. OpenAI will return this information, and that information is consistent with the OpenAI terms of service. Every other button here, like we are essentially doing no reading, only it's like writing onto your slide, and we don't even know which buttons you pushed or how you're using them or which of your templates that you like, et cetera. Like there's just no information that we capture whatsoever. And that's actually been really important because we're talking a lot about the individual users of this tool, but we're deep into the enterprise like the enterprise sales process. We've completed an enterprise security assessment for, one of the big consulting firms that have people working in Google Slides. And we've been able to go through that process and document for them that like there is no image, like information capture whatsoever, like in our tool, other than knowing who a user is and like, do they have an active account, right? Like, do they have the right to press the layout button and things come up, right? Or do we have to ask them for their credit card information?
Okay. All right. Cool. So remind me again. So if someone wants to sign up and add on this just right now, what would they
Yeah,
what would
so
they open
probably
up
the
Google?
easiest way to remember was they could go to our website, which is deck.support. That is our website. Once you're on deck.support, you can see a little bit more around what are the different features of the tool. We've got these animated videos explaining what it is. If someone clicks download, you'll see that button is prominent in many places on our website. That will link to the Google Workspace Marketplace. You'll see that for me, it says uninstall because I'm already an installed user, but otherwise there's a button right here that says install. We've got 139 downloads so far in the last 10 days or so since we've launched. We've got 16 5-star reviews. I'll admit I'm 4 of those from different accounts that I have.
Okay.
But we also have like actual, real unbiased users giving us 5-star reviews as well. And through this Google Workspace Marketplace, you can download this tool here.
Now I have multiple Chrome extensions going on right now. I'm not sure if I've downloaded something from Google Workspace. Will it show up as a Chrome extension, or where does that kind of
No,
show
so
up?
it'll show up specifically as an extension within Slides. So
Okay.
that's actually a different programming logic that we explored with ChatGPT early in the process, and we landed on the Google Slide extension, which is a programming language called a Google App Script. It was an amazing decision because it means that we're covered by the SOC 2 compliance of the Google Workplace. And so I don't think we would have had to pay like $40,000 for our own SOC 2 compliance if we became a Chrome extension as part of that enterprise security process. But instead, because we are completely within the Google Workspace sandbox, we are covered by the compliance of the Google Workplace itself. And so if you were to download this, whatever profile that you're in, like this is my Chris at deck.support email. It's downloaded within that profile. So here it is
And
within the slides
where does it
extension.
actually live? Does it kind of live on your own
No, it lives in the
hosted
cloud.
laptop?
So
It
it's
does.
completely cloud-based.
So and it only kind of comes into activity when you have Google Slides open then.
Correct. And you have to each time, this is actually, we've gotten this user feedback, like, I love this. Can it just like automatically launch every time? Like, I don't want to have to go into extensions and click open sidebar. Unfortunately, you have to click open sidebar every time. It's just a limitation of the Google Slide extensions.
Okay, so you add this app script, not an extension for Chrome, and then when you open Google Slides, you'll click on open the sidebar, and then deck support pops up.
Yep. You go to your extensions menu within Google Slides, and then you would find, all the different extensions that you might have downloaded. Maybe this is the only one you have. You'll see here, you'll click open sidebar.
Open sidebar, very cool. All right, Chris Freeberg, co-founder of deck.support. Thank you
Also
so
our
much for
website.
joining. We will include the links in the show notes, and we'll also, if you go to umbrex.com/unleashed for this episode, we'll have a dedicated page, and we'll have some screenshots from this episode so you can see what I was looking at. Chris, thanks so much for joining.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it, Will.